Welcome to the We Are Takoma show. Our guest today is Moses Wiles. He's the landlord-tenant mediator for the city of Takoma Park. Hello, Moses. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Alvaro.
And Moses, you work for the Housing and Community Development Department for the city of Takoma Park.
The landlord-tenant office monitors compliance with the city's landlord-tenant law, which is Chapter 6.16 of the city code.
Yes, and what are the services that you provide?
Well, there are a number of services, Alvaro. We do, for tenants, we have an emergency assistance fund, whereby tenants who have a financial emergency can get help with their housing, with their prescription needs, with their utility costs.
What type of emergencies?
Well, if you're having a financial emergency, this program is run by MUS, which is the Ministry's United Silver Spring Takoma Park. I also write a semi-monthly newsletter article called The Housing Mailbox, where we answer questions that tenants may have and our landlords may have. We do a monthly Facebook presentation where we take a section of the city law and questions that come up from that section. And we also, our basic responsibility is that we respond to tenants' questions by phone, by email, or in person.
And what type of questions are those?
Alvaro, we get all types of questions. They cover the gamut from what the current interest rate on their security deposits to problems that they may be having. They need something fixed. And many times they call us because they simply want to talk to someone.
And you deal with tenants and landlords, of course. What type of service do you give specifically for tenants?
We do the emergency assistance program. We do the articles in the newsletter.
And for landlords, which ones do you?
For landlords, we do something. We have a credit check program whereby they can check an applicant's background. We have a sample city lease that covers all of the city law, and we strongly recommend that landlords use that lease. And for those landlords who don't use the city lease, we have a service whereby we will look at that lease to make sure that their lease complies with the city's landlord-tenant law.
And when you talk about tenant and landlords, you're talking about just apartment or also single-family homes or any type of?
Well, we cover any rental in the city. It can be an apartment building or a single-family home.
A landlord has to be certified in Takoma Park to be able to rent their home, or how does it work?
Well, a landlord has to be licensed. Any rental has to be licensed. And we used to have a landlord certification seminar, but we're now going to do an online test for the landlords.
And here in Takoma Park, what are the major issues that you deal with?
Well, we get a lot of calls about security deposit refunds. Security deposit, the interest has changed over the years. There was a time when the security deposits earned 4% interest, then it went to 3% interest. It is currently 1.5% daily interest. We get calls regarding things that break in a tenant's unit, stove breaks, refrigerator breaks, and we can help the tenants to coordinate with the county's code enforcement office on those type issues.
Do you work with the county in any issues, or are you independent from the county?
Well, all rental properties in the city have to be inspected by the county's code enforcement office. So in that regard, we do work with the county.
How is in Takoma Park? I mean, you have a lot of, how many problems do you deal with? How many mediations?
We get a lot of calls, we get a lot of emails, and we also get walk-ins with tenants who have an issue that they need to have resolved with their landlord. I mean, we get as many, I can't give you an accurate number, but we get a lot of calls, a lot of emails, and a lot of tenants walking in.
And how many people can contact you to try to get a mediation?
Well, any tenant or any landlord in the city can contact our office, as long as they are within the city limits. We get a lot of calls from people who aren't in the city limits, but we have a city map that shows what streets are in Takoma Park.
And then if they're not from Takoma Park, you send them to the county?
We then refer them, if they're in Silver Spring, to the Montgomery County Landlord Tenant Office. If they're in Prince George's County, we then refer them to a group out of Baltimore called Baltimore Neighborhood Inc.
And so how does it work then? I have an issue. It might be a complaint, it might be not, it might be a question. I approach you, and how this develops to become a mediation?
Well, generally, what we do is once the tenant comes in or calls us or emails us, we will take the data from the tenant. We will then we will get the tenant's permission and then call the landlord to see which story is accurate. And from there, if there is an actual issue, we will then try to mediate it usually between us and the landlords.
You meet with them one-on-one. When they meet together, is you yourself the only one, or other mediators?
Well, rarely do we have all three parties. Rarely do we have the landlord and the tenant in the same room. We will call the landlord and get the landlord's view, and then we will then talk to the tenant to try to mesh what's being told to us.
And in these mediations, of course, you look at the facts. Do you go to the apartment or to the?
Well, sometimes if it's necessary. It is rare that we have to actually go out. We will, generally we can do it on the telephone or by email.
And what should a person bring you as information of the issue? Is any paperwork that is good, or depends on the issue?
We need to see, a copy of the tenant's lease. If it's a security deposit issue, we need to see documentation that the tenant paid that and when they actually paid it. Because we also need to know when the tenant actually vacated, because there's a 45-day count for their security deposit refund. So we need to know when they actually vacated.
Once you sit down with the people, how long it takes for the mediation? It's just it varies in length, Alvaro. I mean, sometimes it's a matter of me calling the landlord, and the landlord will give me an answer. Me calling the tenant back, it varies. It goes from 1 day, a week. It varies. So sometimes we can't reach all of the necessary parties by phone or by email. We're going to take a break now, and we'll be back with more with Moses Wiles, the landlord-tenant mediator for the city of Takoma Park.
Across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, helping solve child hunger. They've earned their wings, and you can too. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
What if you could invest in the future? The future of kids, like a stock. Not the kind of stock that's about making money, but a stock for social change. A whole new kind of investment called Better Futures. When you invest, it helps kids go to college. Believe in us, invest in us, watch us grow.
My name is Sydney, and I'm your dividend.
When they test you, stand firm and move only when you hear the seatbelt click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Welcome back. We are here today with Moses Wiles, landlord-tenant mediator for the city of Takoma Park. And Moses, we've been talking about some issues that the landlords and tenants might have. You were talking about the security deposit, that people should bring the lease agreement to you when they have an issue. Is there any other information about the deposits that you should?
No, that's basically it. We just need to know when it was actually paid, and we need to know when the tenant actually vacated the rental unit.
Yes, and other issues as for example, illegal entries of the landlord.
That's a very interesting topic, Alvaro. In the city, landlords must give a tenant 48 hours written notice prior to making any entry. They can only make an entry without the notice if there's an emergency, like a tree falling on the unit or a leak from upstairs or a fire. One of the more unique features of the city law is that if a tenant calls a landlord and has an issue, and if the landlord can take care of that issue in less than 48 hours, the landlord must get the tenant's written okay before he or she can enter the unit. So what we advise tenants is to have a written notice of entry posted outside of their door saying it's okay for the landlord to then come in. Also on entry, if the entry is made by the landlord or his or her agent and the tenant is not present, the landlord or his or her agent must leave what's called an entry notice. And in that notice, they must tell who made the entry, why they made the entry, when they made the entry, and they must give the landlord's contact information.
Yes, and other issues that I see here in the website, they talk about illegal rent increases.
Well, that's something that's really handled by my colleague, Miss Jean Kerr, but basically what the law says is that landlords can only give one increase in a 12-month period.
Okay.
That's the basis of that law.
And you said that most of the issues that you deal is with the deposits.
That's the most frequent call that we do get. And as I said before, the current interest rate is 1.5%, but it's calculated daily. Previously, it was 3%, and that was over a 6-month period. So it was 1.5% every 6 months, or 3% every 12 months.
So now people have come to you, and you meet with them, with the landlord, tenant, the three of you, but there's not a resolution, the mediation. What happened next?
Well, if our office cannot really settle the issue, we have an entity called COLTA. COLTA is the acronym for Commission on Landlord-Tenant Affairs. COLTA is made up of city tenants, city landlords, and also property owners. It's a volunteer situation, but they hear cases that our office cannot settle out. They meet in a group of 3, and the COLTA the COLTA executive director is a member of the Maryland Bar. So the COLTA executive director sits at these hearings, which are public hearings, by the way. The public can obviously take part, can come to these public hearings.
Is one day, or it can go on for weeks? How does
COLTA hearings are held on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. They usually run anywhere. The hearing itself may last from 1 to 3 hours. The COLTA decision is usually rendered within 30 days after the COLTA hearing, and either side can appeal the COLTA decision to the Maryland Court of Appeals.
And so you said there are 3 members, volunteers?
There are 12 members, but they sit
3
in panels of 3.
Okay.
Right.
Who assigns those members?
Well, the COLTA members are really, they have to undergo council approval. That's basically it. They send an application to the city clerk. She moves it forward to the council, and once the council approves it, they serve a 3-year term.
3-year term can be then re-elected again for.
They certainly can.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you said they have to be members of the bar association.
No, I said that the COLTA executive director is a member of the COLTA bar.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So anybody can apply for that. How can one find information?
You can go to the city website, to the DHCD, to the Department of Housing website, and there's a section on COLTA there.
Yes, and anybody can be, or there are some restrictions to be a member?
As long as you are a city tenant, a city landlord, or a city
resident,
property owner.
Okay.
So those are the 3 categories. Right.
You're present also in the COLTA
No,
hearings?
we don't. No, I am not present. We only administer the COLTA process. We get all of the hearing documents organized. We mail them out to the COLTA commissioners prior to the hearing dates, but we do not take part in the COLTA hearing.
There is a public record, they get tape or anything?
They are definitely audio recorded.
Okay, and what is your experience with this? The people who go through that sounds like almost a court of law or something.
The COLTA actually serves kind of like a district court. We find that the process, people who go through the process, we have a book that we can mail out to them prior to the hearing, because most people are very nervous. They never appeared before a body like this. So we have a little guide, things to help them to go through the COLTA hearing process.
Of course, the COLTA is impartial, it's listened to both sides.
Definitely, yes.
Just out of curiosity, of all these mediations, what percentage gets to COLTA? What do you think?
Well, we've been very successful recently, Alvaro. I mean, very few of the COLTA complaints have gone to a COLTA hearing. We like to think that's because we have a better educated group of landlords out there who are definitely better complying with the city's landlord-tenant law.
We're gonna come back to Moses Wiles after this break. We're with the landlord-tenant mediator for the city of Takoma Park. This is the Weird Takoma Show.
Oh, emojis! I thought the conversation just got dumber.
Ugh, internet trolls, just ignore them.
I like you just the way you are.
I believe in you! She's a hugger. Give her a squeeze.
Help up the hand.
Ah, there you go.
Thanks, mate.
You're killing it, Jane!
Give the gift of a lift with Village Rides. When seniors no longer have the ability to drive, they can miss out on many things, like shopping, doctor's appointments, even simple social outings with friends. Village Rides coordinates volunteer drivers in Montgomery and Prince George's counties and connects them with seniors who need a ride. If you need a ride or to give a lift, call 301-255-4212 or visit us online and give the gift of a lift.
Welcome back, and we're here with Moses Wiles, landlord-tenant mediator for the city of Takoma Park. And Moses, again, remind people to read your column in the newsletter every 2 months, I think?
Every 2 months we do a column called the Housing Mailbox, in which we answer questions from city landlords and city tenants.
So make sure people read those comments. Also, you have the video Ask Moses live Facebook.
Right, we do that monthly, in which, once again, we'll take a section of the city's landlord-tenant law and answer questions based on that section.
And you do that first Wednesday of the month?
It's scheduled for the first Wednesday of each
month. Live Facebook at the City of Takoma Park Facebook page.
Correct.
You advise the landlords and the tenants, and tell us some advice that you can give to the tenants.
The first bit of advice I give to tenants, Alvaro, is that we ask them not to be skeptical to really contact us. We're not going to call the landlord on the issue unless the tenant says it's all right. We find that many tenants are just hesitant. People are hesitant to call our office to let us know what the issue is. That's not a good thing, because if we don't know, then we cannot help.
And why is this fear? They think they're going to be
I think many of the tenants have never dealt with a city agency before. They are just hesitant. They think that they may be evicted, which is not going to happen necessarily unless they violated their lease term.
An advice for the landlords?
Well, we find that many of the newer landlords are not familiar with the city's laws. They'll buy a property not knowing that there's a rent stabilization law which limits the amount they can increase rent. So we would advise new landlords particularly to contact our office really prior to the actual purchase, because they need to know what they're getting into before they commit their funds to a building purchase.
Yes, and of course with this that the issue comes also to you from the tenant's side. Does any time is the landlord who brings you an issue?
Oh, certainly. We do have landlords who will call us regarding issues involving tenants, issues like a tenant not taking their trash out properly, not really disposing of it properly, tenants who may be late with their rent. City law says that you have 10 days from the rent due date, or else there's a late fee. Landlords will call us on those type issues and other issues involving tenants not complying with the terms of their lease.
For example, what is these terms?
Well, in the city, most leases are signed for a 1-year period. Many people in error think that at the end of that first year that the lease automatically goes to a month-to-month tenancy. Yeah. That is not correct. 2 months prior to the end of the first year, the landlord is to give the tenant a written offer of another year of a lesser term, or give them a 60-day notice to vacate.
You think in this issue sometimes we see the landlord is the bad guy, is the guy who's taking advantage of this naive tenants? Is this the situation?
Well, I don't view them as bad landlords. I view them as uninformed landlords more than bad landlords. Tenants, when they sign a lease, are very happy they've gotten a place to actually live.
Yeah.
They may not take the time to read the lease, which is critical.
Yeah.
You need to know, what you're getting into, because it's a two-party contract that you're actually signing. So tenants need to be careful prior to putting their John Doe or Jane Doe on that lease, that they know what that lease says. And on that, let me add, our office offers both an English and Spanish version of a model lease.
And again, your contact information is in the housing department for the city of Takoma Park.
It is.
The website, people can find it.
Correct.
Your phone number, your email, you doesn't matter. You rather have an email. It's easier to contact.
Well, I'm sort of old school, Alvaro. I personally prefer to talk over the phone.
Yeah, especially your job is talking face to face.
Well, on the phone, but if a tenant, they may email me, mosesw@tacomaparkmd.gov.
So again, your recommendations for, I want to make emphasis on this, on your recommendations for both the tenants and the landlords.
Well, it's really for both. We strongly recommend that city tenants and city landlords contact our office with any question they may have regarding the city's landlord-tenant law, the rent stabilization law, or the tenant opportunity to purchase law. We're here to help, but we can only help if we know what the issue or the questions are.
Not always gets to a mediation. No, so you solve most of the stuff before it gets to be a confrontation, peaceful confrontation.
We generally do. We generally can settle the problem prior to it being presented to COLTA for a formal hearing. Yeah. We've worked with most of the city landlords over the years. They have come to trust us. They know that we're telling them what the law actually says. So we've been very successful in mediating most of the calls of the tenants or the landlords' issues.
Okay, thank you, Moses.
Thank you, Alvaro.
Thank you for being with us. Ha sido great information. I hope the people lose the fear and get the contact, because the earlier people contact you, the better the resolution.
That's correct.
Sooner. Okay.
Thank you very much, Alvaro.
You're welcome. Thank you, and thank you everybody for tuning with us. This has been the Weird Takoma Show. Until next time.